Welcome everyone to another Open Views session. This time around, we're going to speak about open payments. My name is Geronimo. I'm a product manager in Belvo. I'm super happy to be a part of this Open Views and to see how everyone is connecting to the session. So in this one in particular, we're going to cover a few things in our agenda. Firstly, we're going to cover about open banking payments. We're going to speak about what are open banking payments, how they compare to traditional payment methods, how do they look like, use cases, and a regulatory status. We're going to also speak about open payments as a broader movement around the changes that we're seeing to the payment landscape. We're going to talk about what are they, what are the benefits, the payment rails and the products built on top of the payment rails. And as examples, we're going to cover about CoDi, a payment method in Mexico, and about Pix, a payment method in Brazil. Finally, we're just going to cover some closing remarks, look a little bit about everything that we talked, and cover a few closing remarks. So open banking payments. What are open banking payments? We usually think about open banking payments thinking about API capabilities that are regulated and standardized by governmental institutions that are developed by financial institutions. So the government and the central bank of each country will be in charge of regulating and standardizing how the APIs must be built and the capabilities that the API must have. And then financial institutions such as banks will be in charge of developing those capabilities. They also allow payment service providers to initiate the payments connecting to those regulated APIs, meaning that the payment service providers, so this legal entity type, will be the ones that connect to the APIs that the financial institutions developed. And this will allow payers to initiate the payment from their bank account. The authentication here is done by the payer. So the payer, when they initiate the payment, they will authenticate to confirm the payment using their banking credentials. So open banking payments come to the market as an answer to the problems of traditional payment methods. So when you compare open banking payments or bank-to-bank payments to traditional payment methods over several attributes, you start to see what are the problems that they're answering and what are the benefits of this new payment rail. So we're comparing here open banking payments to cash payments, barcode payments such as boletos in Brazil, or card payments. And we're looking at attributes such as cost, settlement time, availability, security, and friction, but you can think about many more. So when speaking about cost, open banking payments are extremely cheap, especially when comparing it to card payments, which in general in LATAM, they tend to cost an average from 3% to 5%. This usually depends on how many transactions you process and can go a little bit lower than 3%, but still the merchant gets charged between around 3% to 5% per each transaction that they process. Open banking payments are being thought to cost less than 1% in some countries, and in other countries they can just cost just a few cents of a US dollar. When you think about settlement time, so how much time does it take for the merchant to receive the money in their account for the product sold or the services sold? And again, comparing it to cards take for example, in Brazil, they take 30 days to process. That means that when a merchant sell a product and his customer paid for the product using a card, it will take 30 days till they receive the money, which is an insane amount of time. In Mexico, as another example, they take anywhere between 24 hours to 72 hours, which is still very high. Open banking payment initiation, the settlement time is extremely low, and they will probably be instant. So as soon as the customer confirms the payment, the merchant will receive the money at that same time. Then, as another example of the differences, you can think about the security. So card payments tend to be extremely unsecure, tend to have a really low security. Brazil and Mexico are two of the top 5 countries with most card frauds in the whole world. And card frauds tend to happen because either you lost your credit card or your credit card was cloned. So, for example, you are paying in an online unsecure site, and when you input all your card details, they will steal that information and use it to process multiple other payments. In open banking payment initiation, the security is extremely high as you are authenticating each payment with the credentials that you use to log in to your bank. The friction for open banking payment initiation is also really low. The user experience that the central banks are building on top of this open banking payment initiation is really thought of to be as easy as possible for the user. Card payments tend to have a lot of steps in the information that you have to input. Barcodes tend to have, as cash payments, a lot of friction because you usually have to go and pay physically for the barcode or for the purchase that you're using, paying with cash. And these are only just a few examples of all the things that that open banking is trying to solve when compared to traditional payment methods. So looking at the user experience, so I just want to give you a little bit of insights of how open banking payment initiation will look like in the future. And we have 3 major groups of steps that we will cover. So the first step is the user selecting open banking payment initiation when they're purchasing in an e-commerce, for example, and then they will select which bank account they want to use to process the payment. The e-commerce could have already stored the different bank accounts that the user has added, or they can just set one as default. Usually the one that will hold all the information of the bank accounts that were linked is the payment provider, not the e-commerce. So after the user selects the bank account, they will be automatically redirected to the bank application, where they will have to log in using Face ID or typing their username and password or whatever credentials the bank have. And then the user will be prompted to confirm the payment details. Once the user confirms the payment details, as it is an instant payment method, the merchant will receive the funds directly, and the user will be redirected automatically back to the merchant's application, where they will be able to see that the payment was processed successfully. So now we're going to speak a little bit about a few use cases. So you can think about many use cases for open banking payment initiation, and it's extremely broad to any company that actually processes any type of payment. But just to give you a few examples, we can think about, for example, marketplaces. So in a marketplace, you usually have 3 parts involved. You have the marketplace itself, so the company that runs the platform. You have the consumer that is purchasing a product, and you also have the seller, right? So the marketplace needs to ensure to their customers that they have as many payment methods as possible, so they can add a new payment method for the customer to pay. And they also need to pay the sellers for the part of the sale that corresponds to the seller, right? Because it's the marketplace who is controlling both parts. The marketplace will receive the money of the purchase that the consumer made, and then they need to pay the seller for the corresponding part. Another example of a use case could be lenders or credit issuers. So lenders need to have a way to, once they have approved the loan, to disburse the loan to their customers. And they will also need a way to collect the repayments for the loan that they gave to the customer. Open banking payment initiation can be used for both scenarios. So both collections of money as payouts or disbursements of money. Another example could be an e-commerce. This is really similar to the marketplace, only that here the one controlling the platform usually is the seller itself. So they also need to have more ways to receive money or collect money from their customers who purchased for a product in their site. And they also need a way to, for example, pay their service providers. So pay, for example, the company that will ship the product to the customer, or pay for a company that gave resources to the e-commerce to build their products that they're selling. So open banking payment initiation on paper looks really promising, especially when you see what's going on in Brazil and the advancements that we see both in the US and in Europe. But it's really tied to the regulation of open banking in general, and the status of regulation in LATAM depends upon each country. So when we look at Mexico, Mexico released the FinTech law in 2018, and by 2021, there are a few steps that are being taken for the data APIs. So when we think about open banking in general, it usually has like two major blocks. So you have the data part, and then you have the payments part. And usually the payment part will come after the data part. The data part also tries to let companies access financial information of their users so that they can offer better products. In Brazil, open banking initiatives are much more developed. They started in 2019, and as of today, they have advanced a lot, both for the data aggregation part as the payment initiation part. For payments, this February 2022, they started releasing a few API endpoints so that we can transfer funds between accounts. By June 2022, the idea is to have bank slips payments. On September 2022, the Brazilian Central Bank is planning to add a few direct debit capabilities to this payment initiation APIs. Looking at Colombia as the third major country in LATAM, in 2021, there are a few institutions that are overseeing the adoption of open finance that are starting to take also a few steps or a coordinated approach to be able to outline the structure of how the open finance regulation will look like, and it's expected to be released in 2022. So there are a few steps that still need to happen in LATAM for open banking payment initiation to happen. In Brazil, we're already seeing the first institutions launching this payment method, but there are still a few steps to be taken in the rest of the countries. So this is why I wanted to talk a little bit around open payments. So this is a concept that we're taking in Belvo about this broader movement that is happening in the ecosystem that is trying to leverage bank-to-bank payment rails in general to offer the same capabilities or similar capabilities that open banking payment initiation is trying to bring. So open banking or open payments, they aim to provide similar benefits to open banking payment initiation. They aim to provide also frictionless, instant, and extremely cheap payment methods to the market. So instant because usually bank-to-bank payments are instant. So at the same time that you try to pay to someone, the funds will be credited in the beneficiary account. And when a customer is paying for something, they will also the merchant will also get the money instantly. They also tend to have really low customer friction, or they are built to have the best user experience possible. They have extremely low costs. In Mexico, bank-to-bank payments tend to cost a few cents of a dollar. In Brazil, some bank-to-bank payments tend to cost less than 1% of the transaction. They also tend to provide a strong user authentication. So as we've seen for open banking payment initiation, where the authentication is done using the credentials of the bank account of the payer, the same happens here for bank-to-bank payments in general. The user will have to authenticate using their credentials in order to confirm for the payment. So open payments in general, they are a broader set of evolving payment rails and products that are built on top of the payment rails. And they're usually really specific to each country. So the bank-to-bank payment rail in Mexico is different to the one in Brazil. And therefore, the products that are built on top of those rails are going to be different in each country. They have some similarities and they have the same benefits, but usually the rail and the product will be different. So looking at Mexico as an example, the payment rail in Mexico for bank-to-bank payments is called Pay. So the Sistema de Pagos Electrónicos Interbancarios, which is the bank-to-bank payment rail that all banks are connected to. And you can process payments through Pay, both for payouts, so disbursing money, as pay-ins, so collecting money. Then you have CoDi or Cobro Digital, which is a payment method developed by the Central Bank of Mexico that works on top of Pay, meaning that the processing of the payment is instant as well. It is extremely cheap, but CoDi tries to offer a better user experience to process a payment. Then you also have a few proprietary solutions that are being built for direct debit, so to offer variable recurring payments, which is a really a real need in the market in general. Then for Brazil, you have Pix, which is introduced a few years ago, and it's gaining a lot of popularity, which allows P2P transfers, so peer-to-peer transfers, and allows also for payments using or collections using QR codes. And then we have open banking payments initiations, which, as I explained a little bit ago, it is something that we're starting to see in Brazil. And open banking payments in general are part of this broader movement of open payments. And finally, in Colombia, again, as the third major country in LATAM, we see PSE, Pago Seguro en Línea, which is a payment method or payment rail developed by the Colombian ACH, which in terms of user experience is really similar to open banking payment initiation. And we're starting to see other innovations being brought by the Colombian ACH and other proprietary solutions that are being built on top of PSE. And then in Colombia, we also have a few other proprietary solutions that are coming to the market that try to offer an instant payout solution. So a solution that will enable merchants to disburse or companies to disburse money to another bank account instantly, which in Colombia, that doesn't happen by default. If you send money from one bank account to another one, and the bank accounts correspond to two different institutions, the money won't reach instantly. So as a summary, we're starting to see a lot of products being built on top of existing payment rails. Bank-to-bank payment rails are usually instant, are usually extremely cheap. So there are companies and central banks that are building products on top of those existing payment rails to ensure a really good user experience and the adoption of these payment rails. So as I was mentioning, you have SPAY in Mexico as the bank-to-bank payment rail. You have the SPI in Brazil, the Sistema de Pagamentos Instantáneos. You have DICT in Brazil as well. So these infrastructures are starting to get more and more products built on top of them, right? So you have PSC I was mentioning, PIX and CoDi being built on top of this payment rails, this backbone of bank-to-bank payments. So looking at a few examples of how the products that are being built on top of the payment rails look like. The first one would be CoDi. So CoDi, as I was mentioning, Cobro Digital is a new payment method that is developed by the Mexican Central Bank that allows participants to make charges to the customer bank account through either push notifications or QR codes that are sent directly to the customer's cell phone number, meaning that the customer's cell phone number must be linked to a bank account for that cell phone number to receive the push notification or to be able to process payments. In general, in Mexico, by regulation, all banks must have a section for CoDi where the user will be able to link their cell phone number to their bank account, and the user will be also have sort of an inbox where they will be able to review all the payments that they made, all the payments that they have pending to confirm, etc. So the benefits of CoDi are many, and as I was mentioning, they tend to have similar benefits to the open banking payment initiation that we were reviewing at the beginning, and they also tend to have the same benefits as the payment rail which they are built on top of. So CoDi is instant. As soon as the customer confirms the payment details, the merchant will receive the money. The customer friction tends to be pretty low as CoDi itself is trying to build a robust user experience so that the friction and the conversion is optimized. The transaction fees for CoDi are regulated and tend to be extremely low. The transaction fees will actually depend on who is the payment gateway that is offering the merchant the solution, but tend to be extremely low. And the authentication, therefore the security and the frauds related, is also optimized. To process a payment or to confirm a payment of CoDi, you need to authenticate using your banking credentials, therefore making it extremely secure. So how does CoDi look like in general? And sort of the same to the open banking payment initiation that we reviewed earlier, we're grouping the steps into three major groups. So the first one will be selecting CoDi as a payment method. So in this case, I'm showing the example of a digital wallet where the user doesn't have any balance in his account and selects to deposit money and selects depositing money using CoDi, right? So after selecting the payment method, the digital wallet will ask how much money he wants to deposit into their account, and will also ask for the cell phone number, which can be asked each time the payment is processed or only once, and link it to the user in the digital wallet. So after your user inputs the money and the cell phone number, and they confirm that they want to process the payment to that cell phone number using CoDi, they will receive a push notification that is sent by the bank. They will select the push notification and log into their account using Face ID or typing their credentials. And after that, they will be prompted with the payment details that they're trying to pay. They will confirm those payment details, and the payment will be processed instantly, and the merchant will receive the notification that the payment was successfully processed. So it's a really robust payment method with a lot of benefits, and the user experience is also similar to open banking payment initiation, and it's trying to solve a few of the problems that either card payments have or as well cash payment has. So looking at another example, so Pix in Brazil. Pix is an instant payment method developed by the Brazilian Central Bank, similarly to CoDi in Mexico, which allows for payments and transfers, meaning that either you can usually do peer-to-peer bank transfer, where I will be transferring money to a Pix key, which is the association of a key to a bank account. So similarly to what we saw in CoDi. In CoDi, you have a cell phone number linked to a bank account. In Pix, it's not that limited. You can have either your cell phone number linked to a bank account, or you can have your national ID associated to a bank account, or you can also have your email or a random key associated to your bank account. So I could transfer money to a Pix key directly. Merchants can also charge their customers using QR codes as well. So either you have P2P transfers or QR codes so far. So they also have similar benefits to what we saw in CoDi and what we saw in open banking payment initiation. And I emphasize a lot on this because bank-to-bank payments in general tend to have all of these benefits. So collections are instant. As soon as the user or the customer confirms for the payment, the merchant will receive the money. The transaction fee, again, are extremely low. The authentication is also really strong because the user has to log into the bank account to confirm the payment, sort of the same that we saw for CoDi. And another key point for Pix in particular is that the adoption is extremely high. So there were a few statistics that were released a month ago or 2 months ago that showed how key or how high the adoption for Pix was. So as of today, there are almost or even more transactions being processed through Pix than in card payments, either credit card payments and debit card payments, which is huge considering that Pix was launched over a little bit over 2 years ago. So Pix in general, as I was mentioning, also offer really interesting benefits when comparing it to traditional payment methods, and the payment flow itself is also extremely easy. It's a matter of the user scanning the QR code and paying from their bank application. So with this, I just want to cover a few closing remarks and review everything that we've been looking at in this past session. So we looked about what are open banking payment initiation as API capabilities regulated by the central bank. And then we looked at open payments as a broader movement, being open banking payment initiation a subset of open payments in general. And we can see how bank-to-bank payments in general tend to have really strong benefits and are coming stronger to the market to address the problems of existing payment rails, such as cash payments, card payments, or barcode payments. So with this, I'm closing the workshop. I'm super happy to be a part of this, and if you have any questions, you can search me in LinkedIn. And again, thank you everyone for being a part of this workshop.